All right, what's up, guys? Doing another Rashad reads, and today we are hopping into The Magic of Believing by Cloud M. Bristol, the immortal program to unlocking the success power of your mind. Let's see. I'm going to jump right into the introduction, and it's The Metaphysics of Success by Mitch Horowitz. The American metaphysical scene has produced no other figure quite like Cloud M. Bristol. Born in 1891, Bristol has a background as varied as the nation itself. A veteran, a seeker, a sometimes journalist, a sometime businessman, and an enthusiast of the possibilities and powers of the mind. As a veteran, Bristol returned from the World War I to witness a nation in transition. The American economy was growing, but the mass of people returning from the war, many of whom came from agrarian roots, had never worked in manufacturing or large offices, were unsure of how to enter the new economy. Bristol believed that the threshold of prosperity began in the mind. He wrote his two and only books, the fullest being The Magic of Believing, in order to place his ideas about the powers of the mind within reach of the broadest range of people. Within this abridgment of his immensely popular book, you're going to hear about topics that are not always held in high repute these days. ESP, telepathy, and telekinesis among them. When abridging this book, I made the decision to retain this material, and I did not do so lightly. As I've written in my own analysis of the positive thinking movement, one simple idea, I believe many journalists and academics today have failed to understand or even attain basic familiarity with the experiments to which Bristol refers, particularly those conducted by ESP researcher J.B. Rhine at Duke University, beginning in the early 1930s. I take seriously Bristol's contention that legitimate parapsychology has much to offer the motivational seeker. Speaking as a historian who has considered this field, I can vouch for the general validity of Bristol's popularizations and suggested applications of some of the parapsychological experiments. Indeed, Bristol was one of the few positive mind theorists of his day who rightly highlighted the work of J.B. Rhine and his contemporaries. I think that you will find The Magic of Believing, first published in 1948, a surprising and still radical journey into the possibilities of the mind. We remain at the early stages of grappling with higher mental possibilities today, gaining a glimpse of them in a new wave of experiments in placebo studies, neuroplasticity, precognition, and quantum theorizing. Bristol, in his way, makes very large questions about the mind seem simple, because he believed that simple personal experiments were possible and could prove the efficacy of positive mind mechanics in daily life, including in matters of career, creativity, and relationships. I think Bristol was right, and I invite you to approach this book with a spirit of enthusiasm, expectancy, and personal adventure. Nice. That was the introduction by Mitch Horowitz. I'm going to jump into chapter 1. How I came to tap the power of belief. Is there something, a force, a factor, a power, a science, call it what you will, which a few people understand and use to overcome their difficulties and achieve outstanding success? I firmly believe that there is, and it is my purpose to attempt to explain it to you so that you may use it if you desire. About 15 years ago, the financial editor of a great Los Angeles newspaper, after attending lectures I had given to financial men in that city, wrote, "You have caught from the ether something that has a mystical quality, something that explains the magic of coincidence, the mystery of what makes men lucky." I realized that I had run across something that was workable, but I didn't consider it then, neither do I now, as anything mystical, except in the sense that it is unknown to the majority of people. It is something that has always been known to a fortunate few down the centuries, but for some unknown reason is little understood by the average person. When I started out years ago to teach the science, I wasn't certain that it could be or would be grasped by the ordinary individual. But now that I've seen those who have used it double and triple their incomes, build their own successful businesses, and acquire homes in the country and create sizable fortunes, I am convinced that any intelligent person who is sincere with himself can reach any heights he desires. The science of thought is as old as man himself. The wise men of all ages have known about it and used it. The only thing that the writer has done is to put the subject in modern language and bring to the reader's attention what a few of the outstanding minds of today are doing to substantiate the great truths that have come down through the centuries. Much has been written and said about mystical powers, unknown forces, the occult, metaphysics, mental physics, psychology, black and white magic, and many kindred subjects, causing most people to believe that they are in the field of the supernatural. Perhaps they are, for some, but my conclusion is that the only inexplicable thing about these powers is that it is belief that makes them work. Wow. Belief. Belief. All right, chapter 2, mind stuff experiments. In order to get a clearer understanding of our subject, the reader should give thought to thought itself and to its phenomena. No one knows what thought really is other than it is some sort of mental action, but like the unknown element electricity, we see its manifestations everywhere. We see it in the actions and expressions of a child, in an aged person, in animals, and in fact to varying degrees in every living thing. The more we contemplate and study thought, the more we realize what a terrific force it is and how unlimited are its powers. Glance around as you read this. If you are in a furnished room, your eyes tell you that you are looking at a number of inanimate objects. That is true so far as visual perception is concerned, but in reality, you are actually looking at thoughts or ideas that have come into materialization through the creative work of some human being. It was a thought first that created the furniture, fashioned the window glass, gave it form to the draperies and coverings. The automobile, the skyscraper, the great planes that sweep the stratosphere, the sewing machine, the tiny pen, 1,001 things, yes, millions of objects. Where did they come from originally? Only one source, from that strange force, thought. As we analyze further, we realize that these achievements, and in fact, all our possessions came from a result of creative thinking. Ralph Waldo Emerson declared that the ancestor of every action is a thought. When we understand that, we begin to comprehend that our world is governed by thought, and that everything without had its counterpart originally within the mind. It is just as Buddha said many centuries ago. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. Figuratively, thought makes giants out of pygmies, and often turns giants into pygmies. History is filled with accounts of how thought has made weak men strong and strong men weak, and we see evidence of its working and us working around us constantly. You do not eat, wear clothes, run for the bus, drive your automobile, go for a walk, or read a newspaper. You don't even raise your arm without a preceding thought impulse. While you may consider the motions you make as more or less automatic, perhaps caused by some physical reflexes, behind every single step you take in life, regardless of its direction, is that formidable and powerful force, thought. The very way you walk, the way you carry yourself, your talk, your manner of dress, all reflect your way of thinking. A slovenly carriage is an indication of slovenly thinking, whereas an alert, upright carriage is the outward sign of an inward strength and confidence. What you exhibit outwardly, you are inwardly. You are the product of your own thought. What you believe yourself to be, you are. Thought is the original source of all wealth, all success, all material gain, all great discoveries, and all inventions, and all of achievement. Without it, there would be no great empires, no great fortunes, no great transcontinental rail lines, no modern conveniences. In fact, there would be no advance over life in all the most primitive ages. Your thoughts, those that predominate, determine your character, your career, and indeed your everyday life. Thus, it becomes easy to understand what is meant by the statement that a man's thoughts make or break him, and when we realize that there can be no action or reaction, either good or bad, without the generating force of thought initiating it, the biblical saying, "For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall also he reap," and Shakespeare's words, "There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so," become more intelligible. Sir Arthur Eddington, the English physicist, says that to an altogether unsuspected extent, the universe in which we live is a creation of our minds, while the late Sir James Jeans, who was equally famous in the same field, suggested that the universe was merely a creation that resulted from the thought of some great universal mind underlining and coordinating all of our minds. Nothing is clearer than that the world's greatest scientists and thinkers of our age are not only voicing the ideas of the wisest old men, but they are confirming the fundamental principle of this book. Almost since the beginning of the human race, the molding of men has been done by those who knew something of thought's great power. All the great religious leaders, kings, warriors, statesmen have understood the science and have known that people act as they think and also react to the thoughts of others, especially when it is stronger and more convincing than their own. Accordingly, men of powerful dynamic thought have ever swayed the people by appealing to their minds, sometimes to lead them into freedom and sometimes into slavery. There never was a period in history when we should study our own thoughts more, try to understand them, and learn how to use them to improve our position in life by drawing upon the great source of power that lies within each of us. There was a time when I would have laughed at people who talked about the magnetic force of thought, how thought correlates with its object, how it can affect people and inanimate things, even at great distances, but I no longer laugh, nor do others who know something of its power. For anyone who has any intelligence sooner or later comes to the realization that thought can change the surface of the entire globe. The late George Russell, famous Irish editor and poet, was quoted as saying that we become what we contemplate. Undoubtedly, we become what we envisage, and he certainly demonstrated it in his own life at becoming a great writer, lecturer, painter, and poet. However, it must be borne in mind that many of our ideas, the thoughts we think, are not ours at all, or those of our own originating. We are molded also by the thoughts of others, by what we hear in our social life, what we read in newspapers, magazines, and books, what we hear in the movies, the theater, and on the radio, even by chance remarks from the conversation of bystanders. And these thoughts bombard us constantly, some of them that are core with our own inmost thoughts and also open up the way to greater visions in our own life are helpful. But often there are thoughts that are upsetting, that weaken our self-confidence and turn us away from our higher purposes. It is these outside thoughts that are the troublemakers, and later I shall point out how you can keep free from them. One essential to success is that your desire be an all-obsessing one, your thoughts and aims be coordinated, and your energy be concentrated and applied without let-up. It may be riches or fame or position or knowledge that you want, for each person has his own idea of what success means to him. But whatever you consider it to be, you can have it provided you are willing to make the objective the burning desire of your life. A big order, you say? Not at all. By using the dynamic force of believing, you can set all your inner forces in motion, and they in turn will help you reach your goal. If you are married, you remember the stimulating and emotional experience of courting the girl you wanted for your wife. Certainly it wasn't nerve-wracking work, while the contrary, you'll admit. But what excuse me, the contrary you'll admit. But what were you using, if not this very same science, even though unconsciously? The desire to win a helpmate was uppermost in your mind from the time you got the idea until your marriage. The thought, the belief was with you every minute of the day, and perhaps it was with you in your dreams. Now that you have a clear idea of the part that thought and desire play in our daily lives, the first thing to determine is precisely what you want. Starting in with the general idea that you merely want to be a success, as most people do, is too indefinite. You must have a mental pattern clearly drawn in your mind. Ask yourself, where am I headed? What is my goal? Have I visualized just what I really want? If success is to be measured in terms of wealth, can you fix the amount in figures? If in terms of achievement, can you specify it definitely? I ask these questions, for in their answers are factors that will determine your whole life from now on. Strange as it may appear, not 1 out of 100 people can answer these questions. Most people have a general idea that they would like to be a success, but beyond that, everything is vague. They merely go along from day to day, figuring that if they have a job today, they will have it tomorrow, and that somehow they will be looked at after in their old age. They are also like a cork in the water floating aimlessly, drawn this way and that by various events, and either being washed up on the shore or becoming waterlogged, waterlogged and eventually sinking. Therefore, it is vital that you know exactly what you want out of life. You must know where you are headed, and you must keep a fixed goal in view. That, of course, is the overall picture. It makes no difference whether you want a job or a better one, a new house, a place in the country, or just a new pair of shoes. You must have a fixed idea before you obtain what you are after. There is a great difference between a need and a desire. For example, you may need a new car for business, and you may desire one in order to give pleasure to your family. The one for your business you will get as a matter of necessity. The one for your family you will plan to get as soon as possible. For this car, you will make an extra effort because it is something that you have never had before, something that will add to your responsibilities, something that will compel you to seek new powers within yourself and new resources outside. It is desire for something new, something different, something that is going to change your life that causes you to make an extra effort. And it is the power of believing alone that sets it in motion, those inner forces by which you add what I call plus values to your life. Do you know that departments of psychology in great universities have already undertaken experiments to determine whether the mind possesses the power to influence material objects, and that the experiments have already demonstrated the existence of such power? While the experiments have not been too widely publicized, there have been stories appearing from time to time giving the general facts. Perhaps the most outstanding work has been done at Duke University, where Dr. J.B. Ryan and his associates have demonstrated that psychokinesis, the name given to designate the power of mind by which material objects are influenced, is much more than an idle theory. Dice, yes, the old army type of dice used in crap games, were thrown by a mechanical device to eliminate all possibility of personal influence and trickery. Since 1934, when experiments of this type were started, there have been many tests in which millions of throws of the dice have been made. The results were such as to cause Dr. Ryan to declare that there is no better explanation than the subjects influenced and the subjects influenced the fall of the dice without any recognized physical contact with them. By mentally concentrating upon the appearance of certain numbers, while at the same time they stood at a distance to avoid all physical contact with the mechanical thrower and with the dice, the experimenters were frequently able to control the dice. In a number of the experiments, the scores made under psychokinesis refuted that some of the traditional mathematical odds of millions to one against the reappearance of certain combinations of numbers in repeated succession. Meditate over this for a few minutes and then realize what it means to you. Those experiments give you some idea of what is meant by thought creates after its kind, thought correlates with its subject, thought attracts that upon which it is directed, and similar statements that we have heard for years. Recall that it was Job who said, "For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me." Recall that it was Job who said, "For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me." Our fear thoughts Our fear thoughts are just as creative or as magnetic in attracting troubles to us as the constructive and positive thoughts in attracting positive results. So no matter what the character of the thought, it does create after its kind. When this sinks into a man's consciousness, he gets some inkling of the awe-inspiring power that is at his use. And that ends chapter 2. And the next video, I'm going to start up on chapter 3, Suggestion is Power.